The smell of fresh bread carried through the dusty streets of Columbia, California, on that sweltering August morning in 1872. But Hannah Richardson barely noticed as she stood frozen at the bakery counter, her father's words echoing in her mind like the death knell of everything she had hoped for in life. "You will marry Silas Thornton in 3 days, and that is final," her father had just announced, his flour-covered hands trembling slightly as he refused to meet her eyes. The bakery felt smaller than ever before, the heat from the oven suffocating as Hannah tried to find words that would not come. At 22 years old, she had managed to avoid the fate of so many young women in their small mining town, but her luck had finally run out. Silas Thornton was a wealthy mine owner who had buried 2 wives already, a man of 47 with cold eyes, and a reputation for cruelty that everyone whispered about but no one dared address openly. He had decided he wanted Hannah, and in a town where gold ruled everything, what Silas wanted, Silas typically received. Her father owed him money, a substantial debt that had accumulated over the past year when a bad flour shipment had nearly destroyed their business. Thornton had offered to forgive everything in exchange for Hannah's hand in marriage. "Papa, please," Hannah whispered, her voice breaking despite her efforts to remain strong. "There must be another way. I could work more hours, we could take on additional orders, I could even seek employment at the hotel." Her father, Marcus Richardson, finally looked at her, and she saw the shame burning in his weathered face. He was 53, a good man who had worked himself to exhaustion trying to provide for his family after Hannah's mother had died of consumption 5 years prior. "Do you think I want this? Do you think I can sleep at night knowing what I am doing to you? But we have no choice, girl. If we do not pay Thornton, we lose everything. The bakery, our home, everything your mother and I built together. And Thornton has made it clear that if you refuse him, he will see to it that we are not only ruined but run out of California entirely." Hannah felt tears burning behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She had learned to be strong after her mother passed, taking on more responsibilities in the bakery, managing the books, and dealing with suppliers. She had dreams of perhaps one day expanding the business, of creating something lasting and meaningful. She had never imagined romance like the heroines in the few precious books she owned, but she had at least hoped that if marriage came, it would be to someone kind, someone she could grow to care for. The bell above the bakery door chimed, and both Hannah and her father turned to see who had entered. The man who stepped through was tall and lean, with sun-bronzed skin and hair the color of wheat fields under summer sun. He wore dusty trail clothes and a worn hat that he removed respectfully as he entered, revealing eyes the color of storm clouds. Hannah recognized him vaguely as one of the ranch hands from the Forrester spread just outside of town, though she could not recall ever speaking to him directly. "Pardon the interruption," he said, his voice carrying a soft drawl that marked him as someone from farther south. "Was hoping to pick up the order for the Forrester ranch if it is ready." Marcus cleared his throat, clearly relieved for the distraction from the painful conversation. "Yes, of course. Let me get that for you, Mr. Forrester." "Just Wade, sir," the cowboy said with an easy smile. "Mr. Forrester is my uncle, and he is already cantankerous enough without me stealing his title." Hannah moved mechanically to help her father gather the large order of bread and rolls that the Forrester ranch purchased weekly. As she wrapped the goods in brown paper, she could feel the cowboy's eyes on her, though when she glanced up, he was politely looking elsewhere. There was something about his presence that seemed to fill the small bakery, a quiet confidence that had nothing to do with arrogance and everything to do with a man comfortable in his own skin. "Miss Richardson, are you all right?" Wade asked suddenly, and Hannah realized that a tear had escaped despite her best efforts tracking down her cheek. She quickly wiped it away, embarrassed. "I am perfectly well, thank you for your concern." Wade's gray eyes studied her for a moment, then shifted to her father, who looked away uncomfortably. The cowboy's expression changed subtly, a hardness entering his features. "Forgive me for speaking out of turn, but I have been coming to this bakery for near on 6 months now, and I have never seen Miss Richardson cry. If there is trouble, perhaps I could be of assistance." "This is a private family matter," Marcus said stiffly, though there was no real anger in his voice, only defeated exhaustion. Hannah handed Wade the wrapped packages, their fingers brushing briefly in the exchange. The contact was fleeting, but something about it made her breath catch. She found herself looking directly into his eyes, seeing genuine concern there, and suddenly the words were spilling out before she could stop them. "I am to be married in 3 days to Silas Thornton to settle my father's debt." The packages nearly slipped from Wade's hands. His jaw tightened and a muscle twitched in his cheek. "Silas Thornton, the man who owns the Lucky Strike mine." "The very same," Marcus said heavily. "And before you say anything, young man, I know what people say about him. I know what I am doing to my daughter, but I have no choice in the matter." Wade set the packages carefully on the counter, his movements deliberate and controlled. "There is always a choice, Mr. Richardson." "Not when you owe a man like Thornton $5,000, Marcus replied bitterly. "That is more money than I could make in 5 years, even if business was good." $5,000. Hannah closed her eyes at the sum. She had known it was bad, but not quite that catastrophic. Her father had hidden the true extent of their troubles from her, trying to shield her even as he had no choice but to sacrifice her to solve them. "What if the debt was paid another way?" Wade asked quietly. Both Hannah and her father stared at him. Marcus shook his head. "There is no other way. Thornton has made that abundantly clear. He wants Hannah, and the debt forgiveness is simply the leverage he is using to get her. If I somehow came up with the money elsewhere, he would likely just create new problems for us. He is a powerful man in this town." Wade was silent for a long moment, his hand resting on the counter, fingers drumming a thoughtful rhythm. When he spoke again, his voice was steady and sure. "I have been saving my wages for near on 8 years now, living simple, not spending on much beyond necessities. I have been saving to buy my own land someday, build my own ranch. I've got $4,300 put away in the bank in San Francisco." Hannah's heart lurched. "Why are you telling us this?" Wade looked directly at her, and the intensity in his gaze made her knees weak. "Because I am telling you I will pay your father's debt. All of it. I will cover what I do not have with a loan against my wages. My uncle will vouch for me. The debt will be cleared, and you will not have to marry Silas Thornton." The bakery fell silent except for the ticking of the old clock on the wall and the distant sounds of Columbia's busy street outside. Hannah could not breathe, could not think. This man, this near stranger, was offering to give up his life savings, his dreams for her. "Why?" she whispered. "You do not even know me." Wade's expression softened. "I know that every week when I come in here, you have a kind word for everyone. I know you slip extra rolls to the Miller children when they come in, because you know their daddy drinks away his wages. I know you stand up to the minors who get rough with words, not backing down even when they are twice your size. I know you love books because I have seen you reading during the slow hours, and your face lights up like sunrise when you are lost in a story." Hannah felt heat flooding her cheeks. She had never imagined anyone paying such close attention to her. Certainly not this quiet cowboy, who she had barely registered beyond taking his weekly order. "And I know," Wade continued, his voice dropping lower, "that a woman like you deserves to choose her own path in life, not be sold off to a man like Thornton who will break your spirit within a year. I cannot stand by and let that happen when I have the means to prevent it." Marcus was shaking his head, but Hannah could see hope flickering in his eyes alongside the disbelief. "Son, I cannot let you do this. That is your future you would be giving up." "No, sir, I would be investing it differently than planned," Wade corrected. "I am not asking for anything in return beyond knowing that Miss Richardson is safe and free to make her own choices." "Thornton will not accept this," Marcus warned. "He wants Hannah specifically. The debt is just his excuse." "Then he should have courted her properly and won her heart honestly," Wade said, steel entering his voice. "As it stands, if the debt is paid, he has no legal claim on her whatsoever. And if he tries to make trouble beyond that, well, that is a different matter entirely." Hannah found her voice, though it came out shaky. "Mr. Forrester, I cannot allow you to give up everything you have worked for on my behalf. It is too much. It is unthinkable." Wade smiled at her, a real smile that transformed his serious face into something almost beautiful. "Miss Richardson, I have been working toward a dream of something to call my own for a long time. But what kind of man would I be if I let my dream cost you yours? Besides, money can be earned again. A clear conscience and the knowledge that I did the right thing, that is worth more than any land." "This is madness," Marcus muttered, but he was wavering. "Thornton will be furious." "I imagine he will be," Wade agreed. "Which is why I suggest I accompany you when you inform him that the debt is being paid in full and the marriage arrangement is canceled. Having a witness present might keep him from doing anything rash." Hannah could not stop staring at this man who had appeared in her life like something out of one of her adventure novels. "Why are you really doing this?" she asked again. "Please, tell me the truth." Wade met her eyes and she saw vulnerability there beneath the strength. "Because 6 months ago, I walked into this bakery for the first time, and you smiled at me like I was worth smiling at. Where I come from in Texas, I was the poor relation, the orphan nephew who worked for his keep. I was not worth much notice to anyone. But you looked at me like I was somebody, and every week since, I have looked forward to this errand more than anything else in my week. When I saw you crying just now, I knew I would do whatever it took to see you smile again." The admission hung in the air between them, honest and raw. Hannah felt something shift in her chest, a sensation she could not quite name, but that felt like the first breath after being underwater too long. "I will accept your help," she said quietly, making the decision before her father could object further. "But not as charity. I will find a way to repay you every cent, even if it takes me the rest of my life." "That is not necessary," Wade began, but Hannah cut him off. "It is necessary to me," she said firmly. "You are giving up your dream for me. The least I can do is ensure you can reclaim it someday." Wade looked like he wanted to argue further but nodded. "If that is what you need, then we will work something out. But first, we need to deal with Thornton. The sooner the better, I think. We do not want to give him time to create obstacles." Marcus rubbed his face with his hands, flour dusting his graying hair. "This could go very badly. Thornton is not a man who takes kindly to being thwarted." "Which is why we do this publicly," Wade said. "In front of witnesses. At the Silver Nugget Saloon during the lunch hour, when half the town is present. He may be powerful, but even he has to maintain some appearances of civility in front of that many people." The plan was audacious, but Hannah could see the wisdom in it. Thornton operated in shadows and private meetings where his influence could be brought to bear without scrutiny. Forcing him into a public confrontation would limit his options for retaliation, at least immediately. "When?" Marcus asked, resignation in his voice. "Today. Noon. Before he hears about it through other channels and has time to plan a counter-move." Wade turned to Hannah. "Miss Richardson, I know this is happening very fast, but do you trust me?" Hannah looked at this man, this cowboy who had just upended his entire future for her, and found that she did trust him. It made no logical sense given that they were essentially strangers, but something in his steady gaze and straightforward manner made her feel safer than she had in months. "I trust you, Mr. Forrester." "Wade," he corrected gently. "If we are doing this, we should at least be on first-name terms." "Wade," Hannah repeated and liked the way his name felt in her mouth. "And you should call me Hannah." A smile flickered across his face. "Hannah, that is a good name." Strong. The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. Wade left to go to the bank and make arrangements for the funds, while Hannah and her father tried to maintain normal operations in the bakery despite their racing thoughts. Hannah's hands shook as she kneaded dough, her mind spinning with everything that had happened and everything that was about to happen. "Hannah, girl, are you certain about this?" her father asked quietly as they worked side by side. "This Wade Forrester, he seems like a good man, but we barely know him. And even if he pays the debt, Thornton may find ways to make trouble. You could still end up married to him if he pushes hard enough." "No," Hannah said with more certainty than she felt. "I will not marry Silas Thornton. I will leave Columbia first, go somewhere he cannot reach me." Marcus looked stricken. "I never wanted it to come to this. Your mother would be ashamed of me." Hannah set down her rolling pin and took her father's flour-covered hands in hers. "Mama would understand that you did what you thought you had to do to protect us, and she would be proud that we found another way. Wade Forrester is offering us a miracle, Papa. We have to take it." "But what does he really want?" Marcus fretted. "Men do not give up fortunes for nothing." "He told us what he wants," Hannah said quietly. "To help, to do the right thing. Maybe we should believe him." "You sound half in love with him already," her father said, studying her face. Hannah felt heat in her cheeks. "That is ridiculous. I barely know the man." But even as she said it, she knew something had shifted in her. The way Wade had looked at her, the quiet strength in his voice, the selflessness of his offer, all of it had affected her in ways she was only beginning to understand. For the first time in months, she felt hope. More than that, she felt curious about this man who had appeared like a hero from her storybooks. At 1:45, Wade returned to the bakery. He had changed into cleaner clothes, though they were still simple working man's attire. He carried a leather document case under his arm. "It is all arranged," he said without preamble. "The bank manager in San Francisco is sending a wire transfer to the bank here in Columbia. The funds will be available within the hour. I have the documentation here." He patted the case. "I spoke with my uncle as well," explained the situation. "He is a good man, and he agreed to stand with us when we confront Thornton. Having a rancher of his standing present should help." "I still think this is madness," Marcus muttered, but he was already untying his apron. "But I cannot deny I will sleep better at night knowing my daughter is free of that man." The three of them walked together toward the Silver Nugget Saloon, with Wade's uncle, William Forrester, joining them on the street. William was an older, more weathered version of Wade, with the same storm-gray eyes and steady manner. He nodded approvingly at Hannah when Wade introduced them. "My nephew tells me you are being pressured into an unwanted marriage," William said bluntly. "That does not sit right with me. A woman should have a choice in such matters." "Thank you for supporting us, Mr. Forrester," Hannah said gratefully. "Call me Will," he said gruffly. "And no thanks needed. Any man who tries to buy a wife is not much of a man in my estimation." The Silver Nugget was crowded when they arrived, full of miners on their lunch break and businessmen conducting deals over whiskey. Conversations died down as Hannah entered, women being relatively rare in saloons even during daytime hours. She held her head high despite the stares, her hand resting lightly on her father's arm. Silas Thornton was easy to spot, holding court at a large table near the back with several other wealthy mine owners. He was a big man, not tall but broad and solid, with iron-gray hair and a face like weathered granite. His eyes were his most disturbing feature, pale blue and cold as a winter sky. When he saw Hannah, those eyes lit up with possessive satisfaction. "Marcus Richardson," he called out loudly. "Come to discuss the wedding arrangements, and you brought the blushing bride. How thoughtful." Hannah felt Wade tense beside her, but his voice was calm when he spoke. "Mr. Thornton, we are here to discuss the matter of Mr. Richardson's debt to you." Thornton's gaze shifted to Wade and his expression hardened. "And who might you be?" "Wade Forrester. I work for the Forrester Ranch." "A cowboy," Thornton said dismissively. "This does not concern you, boy. This is between me and Richardson." "It concerns me because I am the one paying the debt," Wade said evenly. The saloon went utterly silent. Thornton's face darkened. "What did you say?" Wade opened his document case and pulled out papers. "I said I am paying Marcus Richardson's debt to you in full. $5,000. The funds are being transferred as we speak and will be available at the Columbia Bank within the hour. Here is the documentation of the transaction." He handed the papers to Thornton, who snatched them and scanned them rapidly. The mine owner's face went from red to nearly purple. "This is not acceptable." "It is legally binding," Wade countered. "The debt is being paid in full with interest. You have no further claim on Mr. Richardson or his family." Thornton stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "I have a contract." Richardson agreed to the marriage arrangement. Under duress, Will Forrester spoke up, his voice carrying authority. "An agreement made under threat of financial ruin is not worth the paper it is written on, and you know it, Thornton. The debt is being settled. That ends the matter." "The hell it does," Thornton snarled. He turned his cold eyes on Hannah. "I want to marry Miss Richardson. The debt has nothing to do with it." "Then you should have courted me properly," Hannah said, finding her voice despite her fear. "But you did not, because you knew I would never accept you willingly. You tried to buy me, Mr. Thornton. That says everything about your character that needs saying." A few appreciative murmurs went through the crowd. Thornton looked around and seemed to realize how many people were watching and listening. He forced a smile that did not reach his eyes. "Perhaps I went about this the wrong way," he said, modulating his tone. "Miss Richardson, I apologize if I made you feel pressured. I simply wanted to help your father while also gaining your hand. My intentions were honorable." "If your intentions were honorable, you would accept that the lady is not interested," Wade said quietly. "The debt is being paid. Let that be the end of it." Thornton's mask of civility cracked. "You think you can just waltz in here and take what is mine? She is not yours," Wade said, and now there was steel in his voice. "She is not property to be owned. She is a woman with her own mind and her own choices, and she has chosen not to marry you." Thornton took a step toward Wade, his fists clenched. "You have made a very serious mistake, boy. Do you have any idea who you are crossing?" "I know exactly who I am crossing," Wade replied, not backing down an inch. "And I am not scared of you." Will Forrester moved to stand beside his nephew. "Neither am I. The debt is being paid, Thornton. Accept it with grace or do not, but either way the matter is settled. If you try to retaliate against these good people, you will have me to answer to, and I promise you do not want that fight." For a long moment it looked like Thornton might actually take a swing at Wade. The tension in the room was palpable, everyone holding their breath. Then Thornton seemed to master himself. He straightened his vest and forced another cold smile. "Very well. The debt will be cleared. But let me make something very clear to all of you. His gaze swept over Wade, Hannah, and Marcus. I do not forget slights. I do not forgive being humiliated. You may have won this particular battle, but the war is far from over. There is no war, Wade said calmly. There is just you accepting that you cannot have something you want. That is called life, Mr. Thornton. Most of us learn to deal with it. Thornton's jaw clenched so hard Hannah heard teeth grinding. Without another word, he turned and stormed out of the saloon, his associates scrambling to follow. The moment he was gone, the entire room seemed to exhale collectively. Hannah found herself trembling with a combination of relief and residual fear. Wade turned to her immediately, concern on his face. "Are you all right?" "I think so," she managed. "I just cannot quite believe that actually worked." "It worked because it was done publicly and legally," Will said pragmatically. "Thornton is a bully, but he is a bully who cares about his reputation. He could not push the matter without looking like a villain in front of half the town. That said, his threat was not idle. He will likely try to make trouble for you all in less direct ways." "Let him try," Wade said firmly. "We will deal with whatever comes." Marcus looked at Wade with something like awe. "Son, I do not have words for what you just did. You saved my daughter and likely saved me as well. I owe you a debt I can never truly repay." "You owe me nothing beyond treating me to a piece of that excellent apple pie I've been smelling in your bakery," Wade said with a slight smile. "And perhaps letting me continue to court your daughter properly, if she would be amenable to such a thing." Hannah's heart skipped a beat. "Court me?" Wade's expression turned almost shy. "I should have been honest with my full intentions earlier. I did want to help you because it was the right thing to do. That part was true. But I also hoped that perhaps, if you were free, you might consider giving me a chance to know you better. To see if what I have been feeling these past months might be something you could feel too." "You have been thinking about me for months?" Hannah asked, surprised and touched. "Since the first day I walked into your bakery," Wade admitted. "But you seemed so far above me, the intelligent, beautiful baker's daughter who ran circles around all the rough miners and cowboys. I never thought I would have a chance, so I just settled for the chance to see you once a week." Hannah felt warmth spreading through her chest. "I wish I had noticed you sooner. Really noticed you, I mean. I feel like I have been blind." "You had worries enough without being expected to pay attention to a tongue-tied cowboy," Wade said generously. "But if you are willing, I would like very much to change that. To spend time with you, talk with you, see where this feeling might lead." Looking into his earnest gray eyes, Hannah felt certain of her answer. "I would like that very much." The smile that broke across Wade's face was like sunrise, brilliant and warming. Marcus coughed awkwardly, reminding them they were not alone. "Perhaps we should return to the bakery and celebrate with that pie," he suggested. "And we can discuss how exactly we are going to manage repaying you, Wade, though it will take some time." "There is no rush," Wade assured him. "I am not going anywhere." They walked back to the bakery together, and Hannah found herself acutely aware of Wade walking beside her. Now that the immediate crisis was past, she had space to really look at him, to notice the way his weathered hands moved expressively when he talked, the small scar above his left eyebrow, the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. He was not classically handsome in the way of the men in romantic novels, but there was something compelling about him, a strength tempered with gentleness that drew her like a magnet. At the bakery, Hannah served generous slices of apple pie while her father closed the shop early, declaring they deserved an afternoon of rest after such a morning. As they sat around the small table in the back room, the conversation flowed more easily than Hannah would have expected. Wade asked about the bakery, about her mother, about her dreams for the future. He listened intently to every answer, asking thoughtful follow-up questions that showed he was truly interested in understanding her. In turn, Hannah learned about Wade's life. He had been orphaned at 12 when his parents died of fever. His uncle had taken him in but had been clear that Wade would need to work for his keep. Wade had grown up learning every aspect of ranch work, earning his first wages at 15 and carefully saving nearly every penny since then. He was 26 now, well-read despite limited formal schooling, with dreams of breeding horses on his own land someday. Horses are honest, he explained. They do not lie or manipulate. They respond to how you treat them. Treat them with patience and kindness, and they will give you everything they have. I like that simplicity. You must be disappointed to have lost your savings, Hannah said quietly, to have your dream delayed by years. Wade shook his head. I gained something better. I gained the chance to know you, to perhaps earn your regard. That is worth more than land, Hannah. Land will still be there in 5 years or 10. This moment, this chance, it might not have come again. Hannah felt her breath catch at the intensity in his voice. Her father tactfully excused himself to check on something in the front room, leaving them alone at the table. Wade, I do not understand how you can be so certain about your feelings, Hannah admitted. We barely know each other. I know enough, Wade said simply. I know that you are kind and strong and brave. I know that you do not back down from what is right, even when it is hard. I know that when you smile, really smile, it lights up everything around you. And I know that I want to be the one who gives you reasons to smile like that. Maybe I am being foolish, moving too fast, but life is short, Hannah. My parents taught me that. When you feel something real, you do not waste time pretending you do not. Hannah reached across the table impulsively and took his hand. His skin was rough with calluses, warm and solid. Thank you, she whispered, for everything, for believing I was worth saving. Wade turned his hand over, gently squeezing hers. You were always worth saving, Hannah Richardson. I just hope I get the chance to prove to you how much you are worth. They sat like that for a long moment, hands clasped, looking at each other, and Hannah felt something settling into place in her chest. This was not the dramatic, sweeping romance of her books. It was quieter, steadier, but no less profound. It felt like coming home. Over the following weeks, Wade came to the bakery every day, not just for the ranch's weekly order, but to see Hannah. They took walks through Columbia's busy streets, talking about everything and nothing. He told her about life on the ranch, about the horses he worked with, about watching sunrises over the California hills. She told him about her dreams of expanding the bakery, maybe even writing a cookbook someday, about the books she loved and the places she wanted to see. Wade Forrester became a regular presence as well, gruffly approving of the courtship and making it clear to anyone who asked that the Forrester family stood behind Hannah and her father. This protection proved necessary, as Silas Thornton, true to his word, attempted several petty acts of revenge. He tried to get other suppliers to refuse to sell flour to Marcus, but Will's influence counteracted that. He spread rumors about Hannah's character, but the townspeople who knew her well dismissed them. He even tried to have building inspections done on the bakery, looking for violations, but found nothing amiss. Each failed attempt seemed to make Thornton angrier, but also more cautious. He could not afford to be too obvious in his vindictiveness without losing face entirely. Eventually, his efforts dwindled to cold glares when he encountered any of them on the street, which they all agreed they could live with. As autumn painted the hills around Columbia in shades of gold and russet, Hannah found herself falling deeply and irrevocably in love with Wade Forrester. It happened gradually, and then all at once, like slipping into warm water. She loved the way he looked at her like she was something precious. She loved his quiet humor and his steadfast reliability. She loved how he treated her father with respect, and how he was unfailingly patient with the children who ran through the bakery. She loved the strength in his hands and the gentleness in his touch. One evening in late October, they sat together on the bench outside the bakery, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. Wade had his arm around her shoulders, and she leaned into his warmth, feeling content in a way she had never experienced before. "Hannah," Wade said softly, "I need to ask you something." "Anything," she replied, looking up at him. "I love you," he said, the words simple and heartfelt. "I think I have loved you since that first day, but I know it for certain now. You are everything I ever wanted without knowing what I wanted. You make me want to be better, do more, reach higher. And I know we have not been courting that long by some standards, but I also know my own heart. I want to marry you if you will have me. Not because of any debt or obligation, but because I cannot imagine my life without you in it." Hannah felt tears gathering in her eyes, but they were happy tears. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Wade, I will marry you. I love you too. I did not expect it, did not see it coming, but it is the truest thing I know." Wade cupped her face in his hands and kissed her, gentle and sweet and full of promise. When they finally pulled apart, both were smiling. "I do not have much to offer you yet," Wade admitted. "It will be years before I can save up enough again for land of my own. You would be marrying a ranch hand, living in the small cabin on my uncle's property. It is not what you deserve." "It is everything I deserve because it means being with you," Hannah said firmly. "I do not need grand houses or wealth, Wade. I just need you and a life we build together. That is all I have ever really wanted." They told Marcus that night, and to Hannah's relief, her father's reaction was one of pure joy. "I could not ask for a better man for my daughter," he said, shaking Wade's hand enthusiastically. "You have proven your character in every way that matters. You have my blessing, son, and my gratitude." They married 6 weeks later in early December, in a simple ceremony at the small church in Columbia. Hannah wore her mother's wedding dress, carefully preserved and only slightly altered to fit. Wade wore a new suit that he had saved up for, looking handsome and nervous and so full of love that Hannah's heart felt like it might burst. Wade Forrester stood as Wade's best man, and several of the ranch hands attended, along with what seemed like half of Columbia. Even people Hannah barely knew came to witness the wedding, many of them saying they had heard the story of how Wade had stood up to Silas Thornton and wanted to show their support. Notably absent was Thornton himself, who had made himself scarce around town in recent weeks. The wedding breakfast was held at the bakery, with food that Hannah and her father had prepared over several days. There was laughter and music and dancing in the street, and Hannah felt surrounded by more love and goodwill than she had ever experienced. When Wade kissed her at the end of the ceremony, sealing their vows, she knew with absolute certainty that she had made the right choice. They moved into the small cabin on the Forrester ranch, which Will had insisted on helping them fix up as a wedding present. It was cozy, just 3 rooms, but it was theirs. Hannah continued to work at the bakery several days a week, while Wade maintained his ranch duties. They fell into a comfortable rhythm, and Hannah discovered that she loved being married, loved having someone to share her days and nights with, loved the intimacy and partnership that grew between them. Winter gave way to spring, and Hannah found herself pregnant. Wade was overjoyed, already planning how to expand the cabin and what kind of father he wanted to be. Hannah watched him build a cradle with his own hands, each piece carefully crafted and sanded smooth, and fell in love with him all over again. Their son was born in early autumn, a healthy baby boy with his father's gray eyes and his mother's dark hair. They named him Matthew Marcus Forrester, after Wade's father and Hannah's. Wade proved to be a devoted father, patient and loving, rising without complaint for night feedings and changing diapers without being asked. As Matthew grew, Hannah and Wade slowly paid back the debt to Wade's savings, setting aside money each month. It took 4 years, but the day they deposited the final payment into Wade's account was a day of quiet celebration. Wade immediately began saving again for his dream of land and horses, but now it was their dream, something they planned for together. Silas Thornton left Columbia 2 years after the wedding, his mining operation having finally played out. Word was he had moved on to a new strike in Nevada. No one was sorry to see him go. Marcus retired at 60, turning the bakery over to Hannah and Wade to run together. Wade discovered he had a talent for the business side of things, and under their joint management, the bakery flourished, even expanding to supply several neighboring towns. They had 2 more children, a daughter named Sarah, and another son named James. The cabin was eventually replaced by a larger house that they built together on a small plot of land that will deeded to them. Wade never did get his horse breeding operation in the grand way he had once imagined, but he bred horses on a smaller scale, selling a few choice animals each year to supplement their income from the bakery. But if you asked him, Wade would say he had gotten everything he truly wanted. He had land, family, purpose, and most importantly, he had Hannah. Every morning he woke up beside the woman he loved, and every night he went to sleep grateful for the day that he had walked into a bakery and found his courage to stand up for what was right. Hannah often thought about how close she had come to a very different life. Married to Silas Thornton, her spirit slowly crushed under his cruel indifference. Instead, she had been saved by a quiet cowboy who saw her worth and was willing to sacrifice everything to protect it. She had found love when she was not looking for it, with a man who proved every day that he had meant every word of his promises. They grew old together, Wade and Hannah, their love deepening with each passing year. They saw their children grow and marry and have children of their own. They worked side by side in the bakery until they could no longer manage it, then passed it on to Matthew, who ran it with the same care and pride his parents had. They sat together on their porch in the evenings, holding hands and watching the sun set over the California hills, still finding things to talk about, still making each other laugh. Wade's hair turned silver, but his eyes remained that same storm gray that had captivated Hannah from the beginning. Hannah's hands grew weathered with age, but Wade still held them like they were precious. They had built a good life together, full of simple joys and quiet satisfactions, the kind of life that mattered not because it was grand or dramatic, but because it was real and it was theirs. When Wade was 73, he fell ill with pneumonia. Hannah nursed him through it, refusing to leave his side. He recovered, but they both knew he was growing frail. Still, he lived to see 80, surrounded by children and grandchildren and even a few great-grandchildren. On his last evening, lucid and peaceful, he looked at Hannah with the same love he had always shown her. "I need you to know," he whispered, "that saving you that day in the bakery was not a sacrifice. It was the smartest thing I ever did. You gave me everything, Hannah, everything that mattered." "We gave each other everything," Hannah corrected, tears streaming down her face. "You were my hero, Wade Forrester, my love, my life." "Tell the children," Wade said, his voice growing fainter, "that love is always worth fighting for, always worth the risk. Tell them their old father knew that from the beginning." He died peacefully in his sleep that night, with Hannah beside him holding his hand. She grieved deeply, as one does when losing a partner of more than 50 years, but she also felt grateful. grateful for every day they had shared, every moment of love and laughter and partnership. He had saved her life when she was 22 and desperate. She had given him a love that sustained him until his final breath. It was, by any measure, a fair exchange. Hannah lived another 7 years after Wade passed, her family supporting her just as she had always supported them. She continued to visit the bakery, now run by her grandson, and always had a kind word for everyone who came in. She became a beloved figure in Columbia, the elderly woman who could tell stories of the old days and who reminded everyone that true love really did exist. When she finally passed at 87, quietly in her sleep, her children found among her possessions all the letters Wade had written her over the years, carefully preserved and tied with ribbon. They found the cradle Wade had built for Matthew, still sound after all those years. They found journal entries where Hannah had recorded their life together, full of small observations and deep gratitude. At her funeral, her eldest son Matthew stood before the gathered crowd and told the story of how his parents had met, how Wade had stood up in that bakery and declared that Hannah would stay with him, how he had given up everything to save her from a forced marriage. It was a story the family all knew well, but it bore repeating, a reminder of what love looked like when it was brave and true. "My father once told me," Matthew concluded, "that the day he paid off grandfather's debt was not the day he lost his dreams. It was the day his real dream began. He dreamed of my mother, of the life they would build together, and that dream came true in ways he could never have imagined. They showed all of us what marriage should be, what love should look like. We are all here because a cowboy decided that doing the right thing mattered more than money, and because a baker's daughter had the courage to believe in him. That is their legacy. That is what they leave behind." Hannah was buried next to Wade in the cemetery overlooking Columbia, the town that had been their home for more than 60 years. Their grave marker was simple, bearing their names and dates and one line that their children had chosen, "Together always." The bakery continued for another generation, finally closing when Matthew's son decided to pursue different opportunities. But the building remained, eventually becoming a historical site, and tour guides still told the story of the baker's daughter and the cowboy who saved her. It became something of a legend in Columbia, the tale growing slightly more dramatic with each retelling, but the core truth remained unchanged. Once upon a time, in the hard days of the Old West, when might often made right and women had few choices, one man decided to stand up for what was right. He gave up his dreams so that a woman he barely knew could keep hers. And in doing so, he found something better than he ever could have imagined. Love stories like Wade and Hannah's were not common in the Wild West, where life was harsh and romance was often secondary to survival. But perhaps that was exactly what made their story matter. It proved that even in difficult times, even when circumstances seemed insurmountable, love could prevail. Kindness could triumph. One person standing up and saying this is wrong could change everything. Years after both Wade and Hannah were gone, their great-great-granddaughter, doing research for a school project, found some of Wade's old letters in a family trunk. One letter in particular, written to Hannah during their courtship, captured everything about who they were. "My dearest Hannah," it read, "you asked me once why I did what I did, why I gave up my savings for you. I have thought about how to answer that many times. The truth is this: I had been saving for a dream of something to own, something to call mine. Land, horses, a ranch with my name on it. But when I saw you crying that day, I realized I had been thinking about it all wrong. The best things in life are not things we own. They are moments we experience, people we love, choices we make that let us sleep soundly at night. You are not something to be owned, you are someone to be cherished. And the choice to help you, to give you back your freedom and your future, that choice has given me more satisfaction than any piece of land ever could. If you choose to share your life with me, I will be the luckiest man alive. But even if you do not, I will never regret what I did because it was right, and because it was for you. All my love, Wade. Reading those words, the great-great-granddaughter understood something important about her heritage. She came from people who believed in doing what was right, regardless of cost. She came from a love that was built on sacrifice and honor and mutual respect. She came from a cowboy who stood up when others stayed silent, and a baker's daughter who was brave enough to accept help when she needed it. Those lessons, passed down through generations, became part of the family's identity. Wade and Hannah's descendants grew up knowing that love was not just a feeling, it was a choice and an action. They grew up understanding that sometimes doing the right thing required sacrifice, but that sacrifice was always worth it in the end. They grew up believing that one person really could make a difference. The story of the baker's daughter and the cowboy lived on, not just in Colombia, but wherever their descendants traveled. It was told at family gatherings and written in family histories. It was adapted into a play by one creative grandchild and painted in a series of watercolors by another. It became legend, but a legend rooted in truth, documented in letters and journals and the memories of those who had known them, and perhaps that was the most important legacy of all. Wade and Hannah had lived their love story fully and completely, holding nothing back. They had shown everyone around them what was possible when two people committed to each other with complete honesty and devotion. They had proven that the best love stories were not always the most dramatic or the most grand, but the ones where two people simply chose each other, every day, in all the small ways that mattered. In the end, it was a simple story. A man saw a woman in distress and decided to help her. The woman saw a man of character and chose to trust him. Together, they built a life of meaning and purpose and deep, abiding love. They raised good children who carried their values forward. They contributed to their community and were remembered fondly by all who knew them. They grew old together, still holding hands, still finishing each other's sentences, still grateful for every day they had been given. It was not a fairy tale. There had been hard times, arguments, struggles, and sorrows. But through it all, they had held onto each other and onto the foundation they had built that day in the bakery when Wade said, "She stays with me." Those 4 words had changed both their lives forever, and the ripples of that moment spread outward through time, touching lives that would not even exist for decades to come. So if you find yourself in Colombia, California, and you pass by the old bakery building that is now a museum, take a moment to think about Hannah Richardson and Wade Forrester. Think about the choice he made and the courage she showed. Think about how one moment of standing up for what is right can echo through generations. And if you are lucky enough to find that kind of love in your own life, hold on to it with both hands. Cherish it, protect it, and let it grow into something that will outlast you both, something that will become a story worth telling. That is what Wade and Hannah did, and their story continues to inspire everyone who hears it. A reminder that love, real love, is always worth fighting for.